I didn't ask him to marry me because I loved him. I asked because I was desperate. 3 months before Christmas, my grandfather was dying, and his last wish was to see me married. I had the money, the career, the independence, but not the one thing he wanted. So when a billionaire stranger leaned close and whispered, "Pretend you're my wife, just for the holidays," I said yes. I thought it would be simple, temporary, harmless. I didn't know that one lie would pull me into a world of power, secrets, and choices I could never undo. And I definitely didn't know that pretending to be his wife would cost me my heart. I never imagined I would say those words out loud, especially not to him. The conference room on the 52nd floor was everything I had worked for. Glass walls, city skyline, polished steel, and silence that demanded respect. I stood at the head of the table, delivering my presentation with steady confidence. Every chart was precise, every number controlled. This was my world. Logic, discipline, results. I had built it myself. As the meeting wrapped up, my eyes drifted, against my will, to the man seated across from me. Ethan Cole, billionaire investor, major shareholder, always calm, always distant. The kind of man who never wasted words or emotions. While others packed up and left, he remained seated, reviewing documents like nothing in the world could rush him. And that's when the thought appeared. Uninvited. Unreasonable. Completely insane. What if? The room emptied. Assistants hurried out. Doors closed. Suddenly, it was just the two of us. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Before I could stop myself, my feet moved. Before I could think, the words escaped. "Mr. Cole, could I speak to you privately? Just for a moment." He looked up. Calm, curious, dangerous in how composed he was. "Of course," he said. And in that second, I knew there was no turning back. "I need you to pretend to be my husband." The silence that followed was brutal. He froze, hands still gripping his briefcase. His sharp, analytical gaze flickered with disbelief. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "What did you just say?" Reality slammed into me. My face burned. Shame crawled up my spine. I had just said something unthinkable to one of the most powerful men in the country. I closed my eyes. The truth came rushing back. The night before, I had collapsed alone on my office floor. The doctor's voice echoed in my head. 3 months. Maybe 4. Not for me. For my grandfather. The man who raised me when my father disappeared. The man who never missed a school play. The man who loved me unconditionally. He was dying. That evening, I drove to his small house on the outskirts of the city. It smelled like cinnamon and old books, comfort and childhood. He sat wrapped in a blanket, smiling the moment he saw me. And then he said it. "My only wish before I go is to see you married. Happy. Loved." That was when something inside me broke. Because I was successful, respected, financially untouchable, and completely alone. No partner, no love, no life outside work. I had built an empire just to prove I didn't need anyone. And now, the one person who mattered most wanted the one thing I couldn't give. So I did the unthinkable. I stood in front of Ethan Cole and asked him to lie with me. I explained everything. My grandfather. His illness. His final wish. I didn't mention my father. Some wounds stay buried. When I finished, the silence was suffocating. "I can't," he said finally. "It wouldn't be right." I nodded. I expected that. But then he added, "I may have a problem of my own." He explained a crucial business deal. A powerful overseas partner who believed a man without a family couldn't be trusted. A wife was not optional. And suddenly, the impossible became a negotiation. "You pretend to be my wife," he said. "I pretend to be your husband." A clean exchange. Temporary. Controlled. I should have said no. But I thought of my grandfather's eyes. "I accept." He reached out to shake my hand. The moment our fingers touched, Something electric shot through me. And in that instant, I knew. This lie was going to change everything. We didn't waste time. By the next morning, everything was in motion. Ethan's legal team handled the paperwork quietly, non-disclosure agreements, timelines, boundaries. It was all framed as a temporary arrangement, clean and professional, like we were negotiating a merger instead of a marriage. But nothing about it felt clean. We agreed to meet at his penthouse that evening. I stood outside the elevator, adjusting my coat, reminding myself this was a role. A performance. I had negotiated contracts worth millions without blinking. This should have been easy. The doors opened. Ethan's apartment overlooked the city like it owned it. Dark wood. Cold stone. Floor-to-ceiling windows. No photos. No warmth. Just control. "This is where we'll stay when your grandfather visits," he said. "When? Not if." I swallowed. "Rules," he continued, businesslike. "We share a bedroom when necessary. No affection in private. No emotional attachment." I almost laughed. "Trust me," I said. "I'm not here to fall in love." His jaw tightened. Good. The way he said it bothered me more than it should have. That night we practiced. Simple things at first. How we met. How long we'd been married. Where we lived. He corrected me when I hesitated. I corrected him when he sounded distant. "We need warmth," I said. "People will notice." "I don't do warmth," he replied. "You'll learn," I said before I could stop myself. Something flashed in his eyes. 2 days later, we flew to my grandfather's town. The moment we walked into that small, familiar house, Ethan's posture changed. He bent slightly when greeting my grandfather. Smiled, softly. Held my hand like it belonged there. I hadn't warned him how frail he looked. "My husband," I said. The words landed heavier than expected. My grandfather's eyes filled with tears. Dinner was simple. Soup. Bread. Laughter I hadn't heard in months. Ethan told stories, carefully edited versions of himself. He listened more than he spoke. When my grandfather coughed, Ethan was the first to stand. I watched from across the table, confused. This wasn't acting. Not entirely. That night, my grandfather asked for photos. "Just one," he said. "For my bedside." Ethan slipped his arm around my waist without asking. I leaned into him. The camera flashed. And for 1 second, I forgot it was fake. Later, in the guest room we were sharing, I stood at the window, staring into the dark. "You didn't have to be that kind," I said quietly. He removed his jacket, loosened his tie. "I did," he replied. "If we're going to lie, we should do it properly." Our eyes met. The air shifted. Too close. Too quiet. I turned away. "Good night," I said. "Good night," he replied. But neither of us slept. The lie had begun. And it was already growing teeth. The first public appearance came sooner than I expected. Ethan didn't warn me. He never did. "We're attending the Whitmore Charity Gala tonight," he said over breakfast, scrolling through his phone like he was discussing weather. "My wife's presence is required." My wife. The words still felt unreal. The dress arrived that afternoon. Custom. Elegant. Too expensive to ask the price. When I stepped out of the bedroom, Ethan looked up and stopped. Just for a second. But I noticed. "You'll do," he said, recovering quickly. I raised an eyebrow. High praise. The gala was everything I hated and feared. Crystal chandeliers. Carefully practiced smiles. People who spoke in compliments but thought in calculations. Ethan's hand rested at the small of my back as we entered. Cameras flashed instantly. "Smile," he murmured. "And don't let go." I smiled. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about pretending to be married. It was about surviving scrutiny. They asked the same questions, over and over. "How did you meet? What's the secret to your marriage? Isn't it hard balancing love and business?" Ethan answered smoothly. I followed his lead. We were flawless. Too flawless. Halfway through the evening, a woman approached us. Tall. Confident. impeccably dressed. "Ethan," she said warmly, "you didn't tell me you were married." Her eyes flicked to me, sharp, assessing. "This is Lena," Ethan said. "An old associate." She smiled at me, lips not reaching her eyes. "How unexpected," she said. I smiled back. That was when I realized something. This wasn't just curiosity. It was threat assessment. Later, on the balcony, I finally exhaled. "They're dissecting us," I said. Every word. Every gesture. "Yes," Ethan replied. "That's the point." "You enjoy this?" I asked. He shook his head. "I endure it," he said. "So others don't control the narrative." That word again. Control. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Billionaire CEO debuts mystery wife. Who is the woman beside Ethan Cole? Power couple or PR strategy? My phone didn't stop buzzing. My face, everywhere. I hadn't just married into his world. I'd been absorbed by it. "You should step back," I said. "This is getting dangerous." Ethan looked at me carefully. "Too late," he said. "They've already accepted you." Accepted. Or marked. That night, I stood in the penthouse, watching the city lights. I thought of my quiet office. My predictable life. I thought of my grandfather's smile. And I wondered, had I just traded one lie for 1,000 eyes? I should have known it wouldn't stay simple. The morning after the headlines broke, my phone rang nonstop. Numbers I didn't recognize. Messages I didn't open. Invitations disguised as congratulations. I ignored them all. Ethan didn't. He stood by the window of his office, jacket off, sleeves rolled, watching the city like it was something he could calculate. "You knew this would happen," I said. "Yes," he replied calmly. "You didn't tell me," I said. "That's not the same thing." I stared at him, disbelief tightening my chest. It was Lena. Not the woman herself, but what she represented. I found out by accident. An article, buried deep in a business column, mentioned her name alongside Ethan's. Former partner. Former fiancé. Powerful family connections overseas. The timeline overlapped. With us. "You were engaged," I said that night, holding my phone out to him. He didn't deny it. "She's part of the past," he said. "She's part of the present," I replied. "She's watching us." "She always watches," he said. "That's how her family operates." "And you didn't think I should know?" I asked. He was silent. That was answer enough. The next encounter was deliberate. Lena invited us to a private dinner. Not public. Not safe. Ethan hesitated. "I won't go without you," I said. He studied me, then nodded. Her apartment was minimalist luxury, art that looked like investment, not passion. Dinner was polite. Civil. Too civil. "So," Lena said, slicing her food delicately, "how long did it take you to convince Ethan to settle down?" I smiled. "I didn't," I said. "He surprised me." Her gaze sharpened. Later, she excused herself and returned with documents. Business proposals. Joint ventures. They weren't meant for me. Until she slid one across the table. "You should understand what you married into," she said softly. That's when I saw it. The deal Ethan hadn't mentioned. One that required stability. A wife. A public image. Me. In the car afterward, silence pressed in. "I'm not a clause in your contract," I said finally. He gripped the steering wheel. "I didn't plan for this," he said. "But you benefited from it," I replied. "Yes," he admitted. That hurt more than denial would have. Back in the penthouse, I stood at the door. "This was supposed to be temporary," I said. "Honest." "It still is," he said. I looked at him. "Then start acting like I'm your partner," I said. "Not your solution." For the first time, he didn't have an answer ready. That night, I realized something important. The lie wasn't the marriage. The lie was that I was the only one pretending. I didn't leave. Not that night. Not the next morning. But something had shifted. I stopped asking permission. The first thing I did was return to my office. Not to work. To remember who I was before I became Ethan Cole's wife. The familiar hum of computers, the quiet focus, the respect I'd earned on my own. It grounded me. And that's when the messages started. From people who suddenly knew my name. From companies interested in collaborations. From journalists asking for clarifications. They weren't asking because they cared. They were asking because I mattered now. That evening, Ethan found me reviewing emails at the dining table. "You're building something," he said. "Always was," I replied. "You just noticed late." He paused. "You don't have to manage this alone," he said. I looked up. "Then stop deciding what I should and shouldn't know," I replied. "That's not protection. That's control." He didn't argue. That was new. The next public appearance was different. This time, I didn't follow his lead. I spoke first. When investors asked questions, I answered them, precisely, confidently. When someone tried to frame me as decorative, I redirected the conversation without raising my voice. I watched reactions change in real time. Respect replaced curiosity. Lena noticed too. She cornered me near the terrace. "You've adapted quickly," she said. "Most people don't." "I didn't have a choice," I replied. "You do now," she said softly. "Be careful which side you're choosing." I smiled. "I'm not choosing sides," I said. "I'm choosing visibility." Her expression hardened. Later that night, Ethan confronted me. "You're changing the narrative," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Because it was never accurate." "You're becoming a variable I can't control," he said, not angry, just honest. I met his gaze. "Neither can they," I said. "That's the point." For the first time. He smiled. Not amused. Impressed. That was when I understood something crucial. The marriage wasn't the leverage. I was. And if everyone was going to use me as a stabilizer, a symbol, a guarantee, then I would make sure the cost was fair. That night, I drafted my own terms. Not for divorce. Not for exposure. For balance. And when I sent them to Ethan, I didn't wait for approval. I waited for acknowledgement. Because from that moment on, I wasn't pretending to be his wife. I was negotiating as his equal. I told myself I was in control. That the lines were clear. That the rules I'd written would protect me. But control is fragile when emotions refuse to follow logic. The changes were small at first. Ethan started asking instead of deciding. Waiting instead of assuming. Listening instead of calculating. It unsettled me more than his authority ever had. One evening, we worked late in the penthouse, documents spread across the table between us. The city outside was quiet, lights dimmed by rain. "You didn't have to fight this hard," he said suddenly. "I did," I replied. "No one else was going to." He nodded. "I underestimated you," he said. That was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from him. The next morning, my grandfather called. His voice was weaker, but happy. "Your husband takes good care of you," he said softly. "I can hear it." I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said. "He does." The lie didn't feel like one anymore. That was when I realized the danger. I was no longer pretending for my grandfather, or the media, or the investors. I was pretending for myself. The breaking point came unexpectedly. A storm cut the power that night. The city disappeared, swallowed by darkness. Emergency lights flickered on inside the penthouse. I laughed, nervous, unguarded. Ethan looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "This isn't part of the plan," I said. "No," he replied. "It isn't." Thunder cracked outside. For a moment, there were no roles. No contracts. No expectations. Just two people in the dark. He stepped closer. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. I should have. I didn't. The kiss wasn't dramatic. It was hesitant. Careful. Real. And the moment it happened, I knew. This was the one risk I hadn't calculated. Later, alone in my room, I stared at the ceiling. Everything else could be negotiated. Managed. Controlled. But feelings? They didn't care about terms. And if I wasn't careful, This lie wouldn't just change my life. It would break it. We didn't talk about the kiss. Not the next morning. Not during breakfast. Not even when our hands brushed accidentally and neither of us pulled away fast enough. Silence became our new agreement. The calm didn't last. It never does. The first warning came through the market. Ethan's stock dipped without explanation. Not enough to panic, but enough to signal intent. Someone was testing him. Testing us. By noon, the call started. Board members. Partners. Advisors who never called unless something was wrong. And every conversation circled back to the same thing. Stability. They're questioning the marriage, Ethan said that evening, voice controlled but tight. Not publicly. Yet. Because it was never just about business, I replied. It's about leverage. They think you're the weak point, he said. I looked at him. Do you? He didn't answer immediately. No, he said finally. But they will try to make you one. The invitation arrived that night. A private holiday dinner hosted by an overseas consortium. Old money, old power. Attendance wasn't optional. They want to see us together, Ethan said. Up close. I understood what that meant. They weren't observing a couple. They were evaluating a bond. The dinner was held in a historic estate outside the city. Snow lined the driveway. The kind of place built to intimidate quietly. Inside, everything felt deliberate. The seating. The pauses in conversation. The questions that sounded harmless. How did you meet? What do you admire most about your husband? How do you manage disagreement? I answered carefully. Truth, wrapped in restraint. Halfway through the evening, a man across the table smiled at me. You're very composed, he said. For someone who married suddenly. I met his gaze. I didn't marry suddenly. I said. I married deliberately. The table stilled. Ethan's hand tightened around mine. Later, alone in the garden, he exhaled sharply. They were pushing, he said. So was I replied. You protected me, he said. I protected us, I corrected. He looked at me then, not as a partner in strategy, but as something more fragile. Is that still what we are? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. Because the truth scared me. The next morning, the pressure escalated. A leaked article. A rumor about the marriage being transactional. An implication that Ethan's judgment had been compromised. By me. This ends now, Ethan said. I'll shut it down. How? I asked. By removing the question, he replied. If they think you're the problem. I won't disappear, I said sharply. I didn't ask you to, he said. I'm asking you to trust me. I stepped back. That's what scares me, I said. I already do. That night, I packed a bag. Not to leave forever. To prove something to myself. When Ethan saw it, his expression changed. Is this goodbye? He asked. No, I said. This is me choosing before someone else does. As I closed the door behind me, my phone buzzed. A single message. From an unknown number. If you stay, he loses control. If you leave, he loses you. I stared at the screen, heart steady, mind racing. For the first time since this began, I understood the truth. The lie had protected us. But the truth was about to destroy someone. And I had to decide who. I didn't go far. Just far enough to breathe without being watched. The hotel room was quiet, anonymous, ordinary. No assistants. No guards. No expectations. For the first time in weeks, I stood alone with my reflection and didn't have to perform. That scared me more than the cameras ever had. Ethan called. Once. Then again. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I needed to hear my own thoughts without his gravity pulling them off course. The message from the unknown number stayed on my screen. If you stay, he loses control. If you leave, he loses you. They thought those were my only options. They were wrong. By morning, the story had shifted again. Articles speculating about trouble in paradise. Analysts questioning Ethan's focus. Insiders hinting that the marriage was a liability. They weren't asking if I was okay. They were asking how useful I still was. That's when I made the call. Not to Ethan. To the board. I requested a formal meeting. No intermediaries. No spin. Just me. The room went quiet when I walked in. Some of them looked relieved. Some annoyed. Some wary. I spoke before anyone else could. You're treating me like a variable, I said. So let's be clear about the math. I laid it out calmly. The marriage had stabilized their risk. My presence had deflected scrutiny. Their leverage depended on my silence. And now, I said, you're testing whether I'll absorb the fallout. No one denied it. I'm stepping away, I continued. Publicly. Cleanly. No scandal. A murmur rippled through the room. But, I added, you don't get to frame the narrative without me. I handed over a statement I'd already prepared. Measured. Unemotional. Irreversible. That afternoon it went live. Power couple announces mutual, respectful separation amid growing pressures. No accusations. No drama. No weakness. The market steadied. They exhaled. Ethan found me that night. Not angry. Worried. You didn't tell me, he said. I didn't ask permission, I replied. That's different. He looked at me for a long moment. You chose distance, he said. I chose clarity, I replied. For both of us. He stepped closer. And what about us, he asked quietly. I met his gaze. This was never supposed to be real, I said. And now it is. He didn't reach for me. That hurt more than if he had. When he left, the city felt strangely calm. The pressure was gone. So was the illusion. What remained was the truth, bare, unresolved, unavoidable. I had dismantled the lie, but I hadn't escaped the consequences. Because sometimes, choosing yourself doesn't end the story. It just clears the ground for what comes next. The world moved on quickly. Markets stabilized. Headlines faded. People found new stories to consume. But I didn't. The quiet after the separation was heavier than the noise before it. No schedules. No roles. No expectations. Just truth, untidy and unprotected. My grandfather passed away 3 weeks later. Peacefully. I stood by his bedside, holding his hand, telling him stories he no longer needed to hear. I didn't tell him everything. Some truths are meant to be lived, not explained. Before he drifted away, he smiled. You chose well, he whispered. I didn't know what he meant. I think now he did. Ethan didn't come to the funeral. Not out of distance. Out of respect. That mattered more than presence. Months passed. I rebuilt my life without borrowed power. Returned to work. Took a position I'd once turned down because it required me to be visible instead of indispensable. It felt honest. Then one evening, as winter settled in again, my phone rang. Ethan. I almost didn't answer. Almost. We met without cameras, without contracts, without pretense. Just coffee. 2 chairs. And the space we'd never given ourselves. I lost control when you left, he said. I found myself, I replied. He nodded. That's why I'm here, he said. Not to ask you back into my world. I waited. But to see if there's a place where ours overlap. There was no dramatic confession. No promises. Just an understanding that if we chose each other now, it would be without leverage. Without protection. Without lies. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say no. I said, start with the truth. So he did. And so did I. We didn't marry again. Not for appearances. Not for approval. We chose something quieter. Something real. Looking back, I realized something important. I didn't need a husband for Christmas. I needed the courage to stop pretending my life was incomplete. Love didn't save me. Choice did. And this time, I made it freely.